It's been a long and restful break, but it's about that time to get back into this historic year. Welcome to week 1 of the Summer Showdown. We got new maps, a new hero, and new compositions on the horizon. Things are about to get crazy. It's a fresh start with everything on the line. Who will thrive and who will struggle just to survive? Let's find out. Here in week 1, it's worth noting that there's not going to be any APAC games as per tradition, so all my APAC homies will have to make do with Western matches this week. Another thing to consider is the incoming meta shakeup. I don't know if I'd even consider this a meta prediction, just because we've kind of already seen what they're running in contenders. But from the looks of it, for those of you who have not been keeping up, Junker Queen will end up being a staple in this meta most likely. And since she is a new hero, there's no way of really telling who's going to be the best at playing around her. To make matters even crazier, double main support seems to be the norm. Lucio Brig plus Junker Queen is a lot of AoE stuff going on. Oh, and if you're wondering what DPS are getting utilized, it's a lot of Genji and Sojourn, with some Echo and Ashe also thrown into the mix from time to time. Now, take this all with a grain of salt, of course, because the Overwatch League can be different. We really don't know what's going to happen, but you'd have to imagine that they'll play some similar stuff. And to be completely honest with you, I have no clue for sure who will be good and who won't be with so many meta changes coming, so there's going to be a lot of guesswork going on with predictions. You'll see what I have in mind, so how about we get right into it? And first up, on Thursday, we've got a rivalry renewed between the London Spitfire and the Florida Mayhem. Considering how close these two are in skill level and the crazy matches they've already played, this is going to be a key match of the week. So to me, this game feels about as wide open as the first 2 times they've met. They know each other well, and their rosters are rather even. I guess what it comes down to is how much you truly believe in London now that things are about to change drastically. Their comfort picks most likely will not be readily available in some aspects, so does that mean that they'll be able to handle a flexible team like Florida? It's a pretty difficult question to answer. I mean, they're pretty even on paper, they usually play each other close, and London have proven themselves a lot this year, so I'd like to think this will be a good contest no matter what. But because Florida are pretty flexible and they just seem kind of trustworthy in the situation, if you will, I will be picking the Mayhem in a 3-2. I genuinely am not all that concerned about their ability to adjust to a new meta. They've shown it a lot of times this year, and they just have a lot of confidence to them, and with London, it's a bit more uncertain. Maybe Hadi or Poco can surprise on Junker Queen, let's say, or perhaps Backbone's going to do a lot of good on Genji, but compared to Florida, there's just more of a chance they're going to slip up, I feel. Which is why I feel pretty confident picking the Mayhem. That's about everything to say on that one, so up next we have the Houston Outlaws versus the NYXL. And just to be as genuine as possible here, I'm concerned about Houston because they can't run the Doomfist comp. But at the same time, I'm way more worried about what's going to happen to New York. Things were finally starting to slightly look up for them on double flex support compositions, and now it's being ripped away. And it doesn't help that their coaching situation is kind of a mess too. New York, I think at least, will be in for a rough stage. They struggled just a lot on Lucio compositions, but now you're taking another flex support and putting him onto a main support character. That's going to spell disaster if you ask me. And unless Kellen is secretly like this legendary Junker Queen player, this will likely be a repeat of what we've already seen. It'll be a lot of Yaki just doing his best to carry and keep the team afloat, but to no avail. I'm going to be taking Houston in a sweep. I recognize that these two did go 5 maps like a couple of weeks ago, but things feel a lot different now. I may not feel amazing about the Outlaws currently, but they're definitely in a better place compared to their counterparts. And finishing off Thursday now is the LA Gladiators versus the Dallas Fuel, and this is a pretty big way to start off our week. With 2 names of this caliber in the ring, it's gotta be the most important match of the entire week, at least on paper. This is where we find out what 2 of the better teams in the West are made of. I'm curious to see how they handle all of these changes. I mean, more so with Dallas, right? I mean, on the Glad's end, it's mostly just how do they do a Junker Queen. Everything else is likely going to be okay. Their DPS do good here, their supports could end up thriving as well. I mean, it's a little scary to not have Shu in there, I'll be honest with you, but the potential of like a funny Astro and skewed Lucio Brig combo in this kind of meta is a terrifying thought. So compare that to the Fuel, who you're maybe maybe a bit less convinced with. A Genji meta is definitely a plus for sure, and I definitely do see their support line doing pretty alright compared to most people's standards, but the idea of them having to play more Sojourn and potentially not being great at Junker Queen is pretty concerning. And let's say their supports do alright, well, they're still going up against Astro and Skewed potentially, and that's looking kind of overwhelming to me. Dallas might be kind of meh in this type of meta. I don't know how to explain it. How Fearless and/or Hanbin do will be a huge decision maker in how far they can go. But with all those question marks in mind, I think you gotta go with LA, and I'll be picking them 3-1 in the series. Why leave a decision like this up to chance, right? Especially when the Glads could be disgustingly good. Anyway, to begin day 2, the Boston Uprising get another crack at the Atlanta Reign. This is the type of meta shift that makes me kind of curious about Boston's upset potential. Valentine and Victoria are sticking with what seemed like their comfort picks during the mid-season madness, and who knows how good Punk could end up being on Junker Queen. It's a mystery. So for that reason, Boston has some of my interest. Now with that said, the Atlanta Reign still scare me way more. If you thought the Boston DPS could be good in this type of meta, just think about what the Reign could do. The times where they have looked the most confident this year were when Kai played Sojourn and when Nero played Genji at the start of the year. And then you have OG playing even more Lucio, which is always a plus. And honestly, I kind of have confidence that Hawk is going to pick up Junker Queen pretty well. He's been playing very good this year. So with all that said, I believe there is a great chance Atlanta absolutely pound, so I see them getting through the Boston Uprising in a 3-1. Since Boston still don't have that huge win under their belts, it's a little much right now at this point in time to predict an upset, but maybe someday. We'll have to see. Next on the agenda is the Shock taking on the Justice. If there was ever a time for a big upset, I feel like it could come right here, as the Shock are practically on top of the world, and the Justice seem kind of lost on paper. And since the meta's changing now, this is where a top team could end up becoming more unsure of themselves. They might lose their way a little bit. It depends on your level of optimism. There's a world where the Justice march right in there and pull off some more surprises like they have so far. However, the traditional sports fan in me is a big believer in momentum, and right now the Justice have absolutely none of it. Second chances are great and all for a team, but it takes a special mindset to get out of a hole like this, and the Shock are riding such a high. Am I maybe a little concerned about how the Shock perform in a double main support meta? Yeah, of course I am, but no doubts have stopped this team so far, so why would it happen now? They still have their main playmakers doing their thing, and it's just not going to change anything. The Shock are intelligent, their players are bright, and their coaches are amazing. I'm going with a sweep in favor of San Francisco. I generally am just not a fan of where the Justice are at, and I get the feeling things could get even worse as they turn away from more of their comfort picks potentially. Anything's possible right now, but my guess is an ugly outcome. And now we're on to the final match of Friday, where we get the Battle of Canada. And much like Boston, this is when Vancouver have a chance to come alive. They could strike at any moment as teams try to figure things out and they're nervous about losing to a winless team. This is their time. They've had more time to train under DPay, and I think that Aspire and Masa could feel right at home in this meta. But I still wonder if there's some internal issues to solve. That's my big thing. Something about that Shockwave release just rubs me the wrong way. Their motivation to win will surely help them, but will it be enough? I'd venture to say no, as I actually kinda like Toronto in this meta. Twilight does have prior experience playing main support because he did play it with the Shock a little, and much like the Reign, the playmaking department is going to be in great shape, as this is where Hisu and Finale could have a serious chance to shine. This is low-key the time for this team to maybe surprise us a little, and because of that, it's tough to envision this Vancouver team doing anything crazy against their Canadian counterparts. My pride will be a 3-1 for the Defiant. Maybe things could look a little messy between these two because of all the sudden changes, but I do believe that the Defiant will maintain control since this meta seems like a decent fit for them. Sorry Vancouver, maybe next time. To start day 3, you've got the Boston Uprising versus the London Spitfire, and it's another one of those games where the upset potential is there, but it's difficult to actually say it's going to happen. As I mentioned earlier, Boston intrigue me right now, but the thing with London is they tend to play with a lot of confidence against these low to mid-tier rosters. Those mind games are an underrated aspect of what makes this team so special. I may have some concerns about the Spitfire's flexibility, but they're still a pretty capable team, especially against somebody at Boston's level. And when I really think about it, they should have the firepower to match on just about anything you can think of. Honestly, I could see both Sparker and Backbone putting in a lot of work here. I have a lot of confidence that the Spitfire will win this series in 4 maps. What I really think distinguishes London compared to Boston is the teamwork. Boston were just starting to get on the right track with it during the midseason madness, but London already have it down, and they have for a while. That's the main difference that truly gives them the edge. And as we get into Washington versus Paris, I have a similar mindset going on. The concerns are there for Washington, but their teamwork and general situation feels infinitely superior compared to Paris. And to be honest with you, the Eternal in this meta really don't excite me. I mean, like, really. I felt like they were just starting to get used to playing around Wrecking Ball and whatnot, and now they're using a brand new tank again. And let's say double main support ends up being the meta. Well, then you have less of Khan on flex support heroes, which will make Paris even worse off, as he is one of their key contributors. The pressure is going to be so much more on the tanks, and deep down, I just have a lot of doubts about whether they have what it takes. Washington are probably going to shake off the rust here and take the set in 4. The Paris tanks need to show me proof that they can pick up the slack before I'm ready to give them a chance in this kind of matchup. To end day 3, the Houston Outlaws will go for a 3rd round with the LA Gladiators, and based off previous meetings, you should know where this one is going. Glads have all the momentum as well as the mental edge, and I still stand by my belief that the Glads will remain at the top of the food chain. Maybe there's a possibility they start off slow, but they have proven time after time that they have the Outlaws number. And this potential meta in theory favors them a ton. I really see Houston falling behind in most places. It's just hard to wrap my head around them not playing a Doom or Sigma comp. And think about the disadvantage that Lastro and Iris are at, or Iris, excuse me, still getting used to the new name. They're both playing heroes outside of their natural positions, while the Glads could be playing a top tier Brig and Lucio at the same time. All signs, at least in my eyes, indicate that this will be a win for the LA Gladiators, and just to follow tradition, let's say they get it done in a sweep, as Houston have one heck of an uphill battle to get through, and I wish them nothing but the best of luck. I hope that this game is good. And that gets us to the final day, where we have 4 matches. I wonder what's going to happen when Paris play Vancouver first. Could this be the day that the Titans finally get a win? This might be it, ladies and gentlemen. Like, seriously. Paris are definitely beatable. There is no telling how good they can play here. But there's also no telling what Vancouver could do, and that's maybe a little concerning. With the shape these two are in, maybe we're about to witness the Bread Bowl 2.0. Okay, maybe that's taking it a little far, but you get my point. This game could end up being close, but also very sloppy. And I still stand by my belief that I don't think Paris will be that great in this meta, and that the Titans are desperate for a win. And in my eyes, at this point in time, they've gone winless for long enough. They're going to capitalize on their opportunity, baby. Let's go all in on the Titans. To be serious, I mean, they can match on Sojourn. I think they can do well in a Genji mirror, and Masa kind of gives them the edge at main support, or at least on Lucio. They can actually do this. It's a lot closer than you might think. My bold prediction will be that Aspire has a crazy day, kind of like what we saw in that Washington series. My man is a Sojourn player, and he's going to be playing out of his mind against DPS players he knows he can take out. I'm locking it in. Vancouver get their first win of the season and secure the breadsticks in a 5-map thriller. The Titans will not be going winless this year. I'm a believer. I wouldn't say that I'm confident this pred comes true, but I can see the potential. It's there. And with how boring my other preds are this week, how about we spice it up a little? Next we have the Mayhem playing the Shock, and admittedly, I'm not that excited about it. I see this being exactly like their previous meeting. The Mayhem maybe push the Shock from time to time, but they're going to be the ones who maintain control, while Florida just look for answers. The Mayhem have the intrigue factor, since you never know what you're gonna get, but the Shock are at the top of their game. It's the classic good versus great team type of deal. We all know that the Mayhem are a respectable roster, but these are the big boys, so to speak, and their track record against said teams are not very good. There's going to be certain things they can do well, especially if this Contenders meta comes true, but could they really do any better than the Shock? My guess would be no, as they don't have the firepower or the coaching to compete. So let's give it to the Shock in a 3-1 as they stay undefeated here in the qualifiers. This team is going to need a tougher challenge if there's going to be a blemish on that record. Sorry, Florida, you're not cut out for this. Alright, let's keep it moving. New York and Dallas are going to take up slot number 3. And let's be honest with ourselves, if the NYXL cannot defeat Houston, their chances against Dallas will not be much better. No matter what we end up seeing, the Fuel are the better team no matter what. They're just way more stable. And with New York, I think the worst part about this is, a Genji meta works even better for your opponent than it does for you, and that's a problem, because while Yaki has done some crazy shenanigans on this hero, Sparkle's like a completely different beast. His ceiling is simply higher. New York's support line and general team play will just not be able to enable Yaki, if you will, nearly as much as Dallas is going to with Sparkle. Remember how Toronto struggled at first when swapping coaches? That's the direction I see New York heading towards. So with that said, Dallas win in a convincing 3-1. New York has that extra pressure of learning under a new coach along with the meta changes, and that's a major disadvantage on top of what they're already dealing with this year. The Fuel likely win simply by staying out of their own way here, and the rest is going to fall into place no sweat. And now we can move on to the final match of the day. The Toronto Defiant versus the Atlanta Reign. In theory, I could see this being an okay matchup, but because the Defiant tend to fizzle out against these good opponents, I'm not getting my hopes up. And this is especially the case in this matchup, since I am of the belief Atlanta will crush it this stage. The Defiant could be comfortable in a lot of areas here, but so will the Atlanta Reign, and since they are the better team, obviously that spells danger for a Toronto team who's trying to catch their opponents off guard. You're going to favor the Reign on DPS especially in my eyes, thanks to Kai's carry potential on Sojourn, but I'm also of the belief they're in better shape at support, as I believe that Twilight plays a major role on those flex support heroes, and now that he's off of them, the Defiant could take a bit of a hit against these stronger opponents. And with how they've done against these kinds of teams, I'm expecting the Reign to win in a sweep. Now, considering all the new stuff that we're facing this week, there is a chance that this could end up being a decent match, but I'm more so in the other boat. I don't have a lot of optimism. I think that we're going to see a lot of blowouts as a bunch of teams try to figure out what works the best. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say regarding the final match of the week, so we're out of here. We are officially halfway through the year, ladies and gentlemen, but it still does feel like we're about to embark on something new and exciting. This week is going to be very fun, and I'd like to hear what you think. Do you think we're going to see a lot of interesting stuff going on with Junker Queen in the mix and new compositions on the horizon? Are we going to see any upsets this week, or are we going to have a lot of blowouts? Tell me all your thoughts down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video and you want more content just like this, hitting like and subscribe would be greatly appreciated. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.